say the most overlooked item that, for years and years, Doug, being in the prep business and having tried to warn people that the day would come when the blessings that we have been taking for granted, our easy access to food and then nutritional food, and now with all of the chemical destruction going on in our food systems and sources. And what we're facing right now is, I would say this, we are facing a food apocalypse, if you will, the revealing of just the lack of food that's going to be available. Fukushima has been the biggest covered-up extinction-level event in history. You couple that with the stories of the Mississippi River drying up, and there are areas where obviously the barges can't go. They can't bring their wheat and grains from the Midwest to different places to sell them. Then we've got the just absolute astonishing climatic imbalances going on, not to mention the chemtrail spraying. And ladies and gentlemen, the idea is this. The nice thing about thinking about giving a food storage program or food storage nutritional items, it's the gift that keeps on giving, because it keeps the recipient in the world of the living. That's my new poem for you tonight. Give the gift that keeps on giving and keep the people in the land of the living. So we're going to talk about what's going on now. I've been in the food business in the survival business, prep business, whatever you want to call it, for 35 years. But I asked Bob if he would come on just to give a reality check, because he's currently in that food, and we both are dealers for Numana, which will give some specials out later, and probably one of the best food sources in the country, in my opinion. They've done some neat stuff for me at my, and when I say this, I know the food business pretty well. And what's going on right now, Doug, Joe, and listening audience, is that the idea that you can always get nutritional food is fast and it's swiftly fleeing away. So, Bob, share what's going on, because obviously you hear the scuttlebutt from different purchasing departments, and let's try and, if by the hour that God's given us tonight, let's try and get people to understand that it's a biblical principle. You'll sell your birthright when you're starving to death. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, not only did you sell your birthright, Steve, but I remember one particular night I was in Pakistan, and I was in a cab driving around, and we were at a stoplight, and this lady came up to me and knocked on the window and asked me for $100 and that she would give me her young daughter. She needed that money to feed the rest of her family. Now, I suspect that mother loved her children as much as any other mother loves their children. We cannot even conceive of that in this country, that a mother would do such a thing. But desperation will drive people to do anything. We've mentioned the book, The Savage Continent, many times on this program, and we see those nations that gave in to doctrines of demons. In just about a decade, they went from the most evolved societies that humanity had ever known, the greatest art, literature, science, everything came out of those countries of Italy and Germany. After that was over, we saw people groveling in the streets doing unbelievably depraved acts just for a little food. You've read the quote, Steve, you know. And right now, in this country, we take it for granted that we can go down and purchase food. But I challenge people to look. When you go to your grocery store, look at the blank spaces that you will see. Look at how they are spreading out the food, that there's more spaces in between the items. It is because there are delivery issues that are developing. And so they want to make it look, it's like the child who spreads his vegetables out on the table on his plate to make it look like he's eaten it all. But that's what's being done. We are being tricked and deceived into thinking that this just-in-time food delivery system is running the way it should. And in reality, like you said, Fukushima, just so many natural disasters we've had, is affecting the ability to feed the people on this planet in a manner that would keep them from starving. Just these last two natural disasters we had, the hurricanes, it wiped out all of the food industry, the long-term food industry in this country. Every one of them were cleaned out by those two natural disasters. one of the companies, you sent me the article, they are still not caught up. They're still 3 and 4 weeks behind. And some of them have caught up. But just imagine, Steve, if those two events can clean out the long-term food storage supply in this nation, when the critical event happens, when the America hits the wall event happens, it will not be available. And if you do not think you will be out there, and I hate to say this, if you do not think you will be out there doing the same thing, selling whatever you have, whether it's your children or whatever, you are wrong. If you remember the story in the Bible of Joseph, after the people had given up all their money, they gave up their land. So in the end, they lost everything they had. I imagine that there were wise people in the land of Egypt at that time that went to school on Joseph's dream and said, I know the nation is storing food, but I'm going to do it for myself also. I imagine those people fared a lot better than the ones that had to come to the government, Joseph, and mortgage everything they had to feed their family. We do not know the power of starvation in this country and what it drives people to do. Steve, I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, I traveled to a lot of third world, very desperate places, and I'm telling you, you see need, and people will do anything. They will sell anything to meet that need.
I think it's important, ladies and gentlemen, too, that you understand that the shortages are already showing up, not just in the food business, but Bob and Doug and Joe, people that are on thyroid, especially natural thyroid, they can't get it right now because the companies that produce it they're claiming they're way backed up. And even saline bags that used to sell for $5 a piece, a doctor friend of mine said they're going for $35, $40, and they're in short supply. I think one of the things that most people don't understand, and I told all the newsletter writers that I know and guys that write headlines, Doug, Joe, and Bob, on the words collapse mean nothing anymore. Economic Armageddon means nothing anymore. There are no terms that anyone can possibly use anymore because all of those words have ceased to be effective. It doesn't matter if you use catastrophe, collapse, starvation. We're watching Venezuela starve, and still the mainstream press doesn't say where is all that money going because it's one of the largest oil producer exporters in the world. So somebody's getting rich at the expense of people dying. And again, I think what really is critical is if you look at all these survival shows on the History Channel or A&E or wherever they're at, and they're all over the place, if you notice how long it takes for these guys who are some of the most rugged outdoorsmen, some of the toughest military guys, spec ops guys, Green Berets, you name it, they're there. But eventually they come to the F question, that's food. And the idea that everyone's going to go into the woods and live like Daniel Boone when they possess not the skills, the knowledge, or any of the understanding that everybody else who believes they're in the same category will be hunting for the same goods. Doug, I've used this term before. You want to be where everyone else isn't. In any panic, that was kind of my, if you will, I guess you'd call it my motto for preparation. You don't want to be downtown when the streets are being burned and the stores are being looted. You want to avoid those areas at all costs. And unfortunately, there's an idyllic mindset that because, and I'm speaking not me now, I'm using me just in a first person, because people who think this mindset are really in trouble. Well, I'm a good person, and that won't happen to me. The good people, and God bless them, I would encourage them to understand this. History is replete with the same political movements that we're seeing undergoing in the streets of America right now, and there are people that will run the estimates of up from 100 to 200 million people killed under Marxism and communism. Yet we're undergoing a complete civil war. We're undergoing, and when I say this, it's in the background, but it will come into the foreground with such fury I believe the truckers have new regulations which somebody, has got to get the administration's attention. The farmers, not the farmers, but the truckers are stretched as thin as they can get. I mean, when you appreciate how little a trucker makes over the road and his expenses, I'm not talking about fueling the rigs and stuff. I'm talking about these are the men that basically take whatever's produced, and ladies, whatever's produced, they deliver it to your table. The store is just an intermediary. So I think it's really critical that people understand this, that there is no greater life assurance, ASSURANCE, than obviously planning for this. You can do a lot of things, but when you starve, and obviously when the heat's off and those things, look, it used to be anybody who would talk about food storage. And Bob, you know this, anybody in the prep business was called fear mongers, fear porn purveyors, selling fear to sell food, blah, 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 blah. But now you've got entire parts of the Pacific Ocean basically dead. There is no living organisms to eat. You've got the entire Arctic now going into a treaty where they can't fish it for 16 years. You've got the situation where 50% of the Hawaiian Islands, the fish are turning up radioactive. And never in the history of the world have basic physics books been rewritten to accommodate the political agenda of the lying devils from hell that know exactly what's going on with ionizing radiation and all of the ramifications. And you think we got thyroid issues now, just wait another couple years. They won't report anything that's real.